Hey, my name's Brandon, and today we're going to be talking about the employee handbook. I personally have never used an employee handbook because the two jobs that I did have, the job descriptions were very straightforward. My first job was in the military, so their employee handbook was pretty much whatever they told you to do. The second job that I had was at a restaurant, but it was very straightforward on the tasks and duties, but the management was very good at answering any questions that we may have. And if they weren't able to answer those questions, they were pretty good at helping you find the answer, either through someone else in the company or through research of their own. So never really experienced one, and I wish I did because it seems like it's something that could have helped out a lot. Employee handbooks are good because they do eliminate the confusion of day-to-day policies, and they do answer questions on exactly what your job is, what you have to do, and any way to go about asking questions, proper chain of command, anything like that. They are a document that states the management's expectations of you as an employee working in their establishment. So it just kind of gives the management's points on what they expect you to do for your job, how they expect everything to be turned in a timely manner, and all that fun stuff. It does prevent disagreements between employees and managers. The ones that I found online did state how to properly go through the chain of command if you have any grievances or problems with anybody in the company, or if you have any questions on how to file for workers' compensation or medical leave or personal leave, pay issues, anything along those lines. So they are pretty good to have. They usually state the overview and mission statement of the company, so it kind of gives you a brief statement about what the company is, what they do, and how they expect you to act as an employee. They usually have some sort of a disclaimer or EEO statement, just once again to cover their rear with the legal people. It also includes work hours, pay and performance issues, rules, policies, and discipline procedures. When I was doing research for this, I found a lot of employee handbooks that kind of had just real brief, like really brief rules, policies, and discipline procedures, and some of them were quite offending and quite a few loopholes. One of them had to do with a newspaper company here in Chicago that we will name the Chicago Tribune. In their sexual harassment section, it says, working at Tribune means accepting a creative, quirky, intelligent, odd, humorous, diverse, opinionated, and sometimes annoying atmosphere. Working at the Tribune means accepting that sometimes you might hear a word that you, personally, might not use. You might experience an attitude that you don't share. You might also hear a joke that you might not consider funny. That is because a loose, fun, non-linear atmosphere is important to the creative process. This should be understood, should not be a surprise, and is not considered harassment. I think for a big company like the Chicago Tribune to have that in their sexual harassment section of the employee handbook is kind of a bold statement to have, being such a large company that they are. I mean, it's not the worst one that I found, but it's probably the funniest one that I found from a big corporation the size of the Tribune. Another interesting part of their employee handbook is the drug policy. Section 7-1 says, if you use or abuse alcohol or drugs and fail to perform the duties required by your job acceptably, you are likely to be terminated. Coming to work drunk is bad judgment. Obviously. But 7.2 states, if you do not use or abuse alcohol or drugs and fail to perform the duties required by your job acceptably, you are likely to be terminated. So pretty much that second section has nothing to do with drug abuse and certainly does not belong in this section of the handbook at all. It pretty much implies that you'd be better off stoned at work and doing your job well as opposed to sober and performing badly. So, like I said, it's a pretty bold statement to have. I can't really validate the validity of this section that I found on the website, but I do know somebody that works at the Tribune, and he couldn't really state whether or not it is word for word correct, that at one point it was in their actual employee handbook. So he said he couldn't state it, but he kind of did underneath the table say it's not very far from the truth that was actually in there. So it's odd that a large company like the Tribune would have something like this in their employee handbook, and I think it would just create too many legal issues to have something like that in there. Um, it's not so much the wording, but it's how many loopholes you can find in there. And I would just think that it would cause way too many problems, and a large company like the Tribune wouldn't really want to have, um, a lot of problems in that area. So I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. But then again, I'm not the legal people. Um, One thing that is also in a lot of the employee handbooks that I found and researched online was the usage of email and internet use and cell phone usage currently nowadays. I read a lot on the discussion boards that we had that a lot of people apparently think that it's okay to use email, internet, and phones during work hours, and a lot of people stated if it's slow and your job is done, why shouldn't you be able to use it? I think it should be not allowed. If you're done with your job and you're on your phone, or you're checking Facebook, you're checking email, then you either A, did your job, which is understandable, and you have time to do that stuff, but B, you didn't do your job correctly and you're just slacking off. In this industry, there's always something that needs to be done, whether it's in the kitchen, front of the house, managerial work, something. There's always something that needs to be done, that needs to be completed, that needs to be improved. So I don't think personally that people should be allowed to use email, internet, and phones during work. Now, when I worked in restaurants, if I had to make a phone call or I was expecting a phone call at a certain time, I notified the management and said, hey, I'm expecting a phone call. I need to take it. Will it be a problem? A lot of times they said, no, it's not a problem, that I can take the phone call when it comes. But a lot of times they said it depends on what's going on. So if I received that phone call when I was busy on the line, I couldn't just jump off the line and answer the phone. I either had to A, ignore the call and let it go to voicemail, or B, quickly answer the phone and tell them I can't talk. Please call me back at a later time. They never really had a problem with that, and I think if you're going to do that stuff, you should either notify the management or do it on your own time. Do it on your break. The management and the owners they're paying you to work there, not to go on Facebook and Google and YouTube and stuff. So no, it shouldn't be allowed, and I think that's something that should be covered in every employee handbook, especially nowadays with the way technology is with camera phones and stuff. And a lot of places, especially restaurants, with their recipes, they really don't want people going in with camera phones and possibly snapping pictures of their recipes that make their establishment stand out from the one down the street. So they're just doing that to kind of cover themselves, which is totally acceptable. And another thing is dress code and uniform policy. The few places that I have worked in the restaurant, the dress code and uniform policy was very, very bland and just horrible. They didn't really state what you had to wear at all. They just said, dress for the job. So people were coming in shorts and then complaining that when they spilled a pot of soup or oil from the fryer splashed on them, that they got burned. Well, you're working in a restaurant, whether it's front of the house or back of the house. Front of the house, you want to dress presentable because you're putting yourself out there. You're portraying the image of the establishment. The back of the house, not so much. Well, one, because we constantly get dirty with cooking and stuff, but you wouldn't want to wear shorts in a kitchen, even if it is 110 degrees outside. Why would you want to wear shorts when you have oil and soup and fire and all this hot stuff around you, and when you spill it and you get burned, you complain? Well, I'm sorry. I mean, the one place that I did work at for my internship, an employee did come in with shorts and spilled oil on his legs, and the management said, we're sorry to hear that, but we have nothing to say. It was your stupidity. You wore the shorts. You should have known better. They did, help him out, give him a ride to the hospital and cover him on that part, but they were pretty much, calling him an idiot for doing that. You should know better. And the dress code and uniform policy, even though it is obvious, it should still be in there because they need to cover themselves they need to cover all their bases. One thing that I did notice is, I would say about 99% of the employee handbooks that I did read and research online required some sort of signature stating that you read the document and that you understand it. I can see a lot of people just signing it just to sign it and didn't really read it or look over it. And I don't know, I think that's pretty stupid that an employee would just get the document, sign it, and then give it back stating that they read it. This is something that you want to read, you want to understand, and you want to ask any questions you may have, because these things, they just cover so many topics that are relevant to every employee in the establishment, and they answer so many questions if they're done properly that it can help you out legally, or financially if you realize, hey, I'm not getting the pay that I'm supposed to be getting, and it's stated here in the document that I'm supposed to be getting X amount of money, but I'm getting Z amount of money. Well, then there you have something to prove that you're not getting paid correctly. Whereas if you never read the document and you never looked at it, then you will never know exactly what you're supposed to be getting, how your sick days are supposed to be totaled and valued up, and all this other stuff. And I can see a lot of people just kind of blowing this document off, and I think it's immature to do something like that. This is a very legal document, and I'm pretty sure that when these companies create these documents, they give it to some sort of a lawyer, a labor lawyer, to kind of review and make sure that the wording and everything is correct, because a lot of the research that I did also stated that they try to refrain from using words such as will, must, and in all cases, because it's kind of a broad statement, and using bargaining jargon, terms and conditions of employment, probationary periods. Probationary periods kind of make it seem like, after that period of a year or 6 months or whatnot, that you won't necessarily have the job. But what they mean by the probation period is that, they want you to kind of be aware that, you have to stay in line, you can't be late, you can't get caught with drugs or drinking or disobeying orders or direct policies, stated by the management. But the actual term probationary period, it's kind of a broad statement and kind of very open-ended, so a lot of people I could see get confused with that. I've never used an employee handbook, and I wish I had, because I think it could alleviate a lot of stress between the employees and the management and owners, because the more knowledgeable the employee is, his or herself, about the policies and the terms and conditions of the restaurant, I think it makes things move a lot smoother, because they don't have to take time to ask, the sous chef or the manager or whatnot questions about leave and sick days and pay and, equal opportunity and sexual harassment and all this stuff. The employee can just refer back to the handbook that they were given when they first started working at the establishment. Although some questions will arise that, you need to ask for clarification, or that you may not just know or can't find the answer to, but I think it should be mandatory that, a lot of the companies, and even smaller or bigger companies, should require some sort of an employee handbook, whether it's handed out to the employee or it's just put up on like a posting board that, your first day in, you take 45 minutes out, you get there early, take 45 minutes out of your day, read it, and then sign a roster stating that you've read it. And then every time it's updated, you should have to reread the updates and then sign stating that you acknowledge that there were changes made to the employee handbook. Like I said earlier in the video, I've never dealt with one, I've never used one in the military or at the 2 restaurants I have worked at, because they're very straight and cut forward, and the military is a whole different ballgame. Because it's kind of, their employee handbook is, you're going to be here at this time wearing this uniform in this formation at this building on this side of the grass. So all you really have to do is just bring yourself with. Everything is done for you. So you really have to try to get into trouble, in the military, because it's designed to help you function the best that you can in the most efficient way. So if you want to get in trouble in the military, you literally have to go out of your way. So there wasn't really any employee handbook, but they did have something similar to that stated rules and regulations, kind of like the articles of, like Article 112 is drug use, Article 92 is use of force against an officer. They do have things on there as kind of like a guideline, but you really don't read them, you really don't study them that much. You become very, very brief with them. The basics you understand, but it's not very much. One last thing that an employee handbook should cover is policies and procedures that may prevent contentious issues from arising. Somewhat of a clear-cut definition, for example, of sexual harassment, which can be taken in many ways depending on the situation and the circumstances. Something from, maybe glancing at long periods of time at a attractive employee, I can see being considered sexual harassment. Um, Although it would be somewhat of a lame excuse, to file sexual harassment in that situation, depending on the situation. But that can definitely happen, and I'm sure it has happened. And it should encourage consistency of procedures to prevent confusion over important company policies. And overall, it should be a document of the management's expectations along with the owner's expectations of what they expect you to do on a day-to-day basis, how they expect you to perform your duties as an employee in their establishment. And it will allow eager employees to grow professionally and to become successful. So these employee handbooks are pretty much just there to help you out as an employee, to kind of give you the basics and the guidelines of how they expect you to perform, as an employee in their establishment. And it should be something that every place should have, but I can see it being a pretty costly tool to make, with the printing and the reprinting and, giving it to the legal lawyers and having them review it and paying them and everything. But I think in the long run, if you have to spend thousands or hundreds of dollars, whichever it costs, to make these things and get them approved by a legal attorney, to cover yourself in a situation where if something were to happen and it did become a legal issue and the employee did say, well, I never received an employee handbook, the rules and regulations on sexual harassment, for example, was never explained to me, that can end up costing you a lot more money in the long run, as compared to just spending the hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars and just getting these things printed out and making sure everybody that works with you has one of these. Because I'd rather spend $2,000 on getting these things printed out than $575,000 in legal costs, because I wanted to cut corners and save a few extra bucks on on not getting these things printed out. So yeah, I mean, that's it for today, and hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you all in class on Tuesday. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Bye.